We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our ever-growing channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends if you want to support the channel. Through a donation, hit the $sign. When you make a comment, put up your super chat. We'll get to it as soon as possible. Welcome into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid, PATC community. Do not be afraid to be a legend in the chat room or with your phone calls later in the show. I know I'm a little stupid, but I know there's an NFC championship game going on right now. I get it. Detroit Lions, the 49ers. I know you all are watching it. Congratulations. Great. Why are you doing a Sunday night show during the NFC championship game? You're not going to get anybody to watch? Probably not. But if you have been watching us for the first 17 months, we just don't work the way that normal people work. You always have to keep your head on a swivel. If you're going to be part of the PATC community, this channel is not for everyone. It just isn't. I mean, it is very difficult to sit there and listen to the fat guy from Minnesota. This horrible accent, the way I talk, I mispronunciate every fifth word. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to be part of this community because all we talk is college football. And when we have some information, I get it out to you as quick and as accurate as possible. I give you all the straight shoot. Everybody in the chat, everybody in the PATC community has been mad at me one time or another. We don't cover just one college football team. We don't just cover one conferences. I don't wave the pom-poms. I'm tough on everybody. Nobody likes me. We are the rebel outpost of all college football. But at the same time, we've been able to give you a peek around the corner when it comes to college football. We've got information, a flood of information today. Why today? I don't really know. I don't know. But this is coming from, part of it is coming from BTM and his associates. I don't talk about BTM much on this channel, but those who've been following me for 10 years on Twitter, Minnesota 247, you know that BTM stands for Big Ten Man and his associates, the Money Perch, connections across the country. They were the ones that, when we broke the USC called the Big Ten, USC called the Big Ten. March 31st, 2022, we broke that news. It was covered by the Los Angeles Times when everybody figured out that we had it for 3 months before anyone else did. The Colorado at the center of the stage, story after story after story. We worked so hard to give you the accurate, quick peek around the corner. So we got information today. Now, was I supposed to sit on it? Was I supposed to just, we'll wait for tomorrow? I talked to the little general. Of course I'm going on live. Of course. I get it. NFC Championship game is on. If there was something going on where a meteorite was going to hit the earth 30 minutes from now and destroy half the planet or the whole planet, but I got some information about college football, I'm going to go live. You always got to keep your head on a swivel. So we got information today. Man, if you were all with us during the Colorado at the center of the stage, we knew they were the tip of the spear when it comes to the Big 12. If you were with us then, you also recall me saying Oregon or Washington. If it ain't going to happen 5 months from now, if they're not going to join the Big Ten, it's going to happen 5 years from now. I said that in every single live show, and I talked about all the support Washington and Oregon had, even though I was getting dragged over the coals by just about everybody. Even though there was reports out there that the Big Ten was done over and over and over again. When Kevin Warren left the commissioner's office in the Big Ten, we went over everything that needed to happen for Washington and Oregon to get to the Big Ten. Some Big Ten presidents wanted them. Fox Sports wanted them, and it happened. But we talked about Washington and Oregon. I didn't talk about Stanford and California. Throughout those many months, there were some reports that had Stanford and California, Washington and Oregon. I told you and over again, we could not pick up the California steam no matter how hard we tried. And it's true today. They're not the 20th team for the Big Ten. But I'm just giving you an example. So, look, pretty much from here on in, when we talk about the Big Ten expansion candidates, the targets, we're going to be talking about a certain combo, much like we talked about Oregon and Washington. And I'm going to get to that. It's a little bit of a tease, but it is become very apparent behind the curtain, and I'm going to explain what we've been told. But there is a definite school that has emerged as the chalk for the Big Ten, for the 20th school. If Notre Dame doesn't leave their independence in football, and if North Carolina does not become available, and it's becoming more and more complicated for North Carolina to ever become available to the Big Ten, that there is a 20th school with Florida State, 19. There is a school that has emerged. We are now considering not just the chalk, but the heavy chalk. And we're going to get to that. Let me thank everybody for coming on in. I know it's NFC. Have the game on. Watch me, watch the game, whatever. But we're going to lay it down tonight. People can watch it tomorrow. I hope you stick with us here. We got a little bit of a monologue to get through. There is great unease throughout college football. We're going to be talking about what the interim president of Nebraska had to say. And if the interim president of Nebraska is nervous, then almost everybody should be nervous. At least keeping your head on a swivel. And talking about keeping your head on a swivel, Virginia Tech's athletic director, he says he's keeping his head on a swivel. We're going to be hitting that first. We're going to be hitting the Nebraska story second. And then we're going to be hitting the school that has emerged as the definite chalk to become the 20th Big Ten school. We are reporting this January 28th, 2024. You can take our information and you can take it however you want it, but this school has definitely emerged as the heavy chalk to go into the Big Ten as a combo with the Florida State Seminoles. I want to thank everybody for coming on in first. Mr. Monkey Says is in the house. Joe Z, Georgia Tech is in the house. Matt Higgins, early peak member. Stephen McNeely, Hummus Hero, early peak member. Nathan Campbell. Hi, Nathan. Hagen is in the house. Mof Prof is in the house. R Webb is in the house. D5 Terps is in the house. Gene Calderon is in. Let me get to everybody else here. Canes All Day is in the house. D5 Terps. Flug's mispronunciations are the best. Thank you very much. You darn tootin' MBM is in the house. David Kreitzer. Lewis, during the NFC Championship game. I know, Lewis. I know. I get it. There's a lot of angry people with me. Be angry. Be angry. Be upset. I get it. But we at Peek Around the Corner, we're a little, there's no way I could sit on this. So I get it. Look, there might be 10 minutes from now, every single one of you might leave the chat because of the NFC Championship game. I'm just going to have to live with that. I am just going to have to live with that. Maryland loves you. Thank you, JD Turtle. Oh boy. No, I'm sorry. Ohio boy. Holy smokes. I did not see that. I apologize, Ohio boy. Thank you so much for your generosity. Thank you for becoming an early peak cloak and dagger. You are knighted. Thank you so very much. Coy has once again gifted a, holy smokes, another cloak and dagger membership. Thank you, Coy. Once again, you are knighted, and whoever picked up that gift membership, and I'm going to get to in a second, thank you so very much, Coy. Once again, for your incredible generosity. B Bean says, no way we are leaving. Stop rambling and tell the bleep story. Empire Marketing. Rock Chalk is in the house. Anthony's in the house. Right of Line is in the house. Go Gophers. Cloak and Dagger. Sean Eaton, Miami. Jeff Jorgensen, thanks for coming on in. Okay, and Nathan Campbell, congratulations. Nathan Campbell, you have been gifted a membership by Coy. Nathan Campbell, you are knighted, officially knighted, Cloak and Dagger member. Okay. All right, let's get to now, if you did have an early peak membership, Cloak and Dagger membership, and we put this story out early in the morning, you would have already watched this. You get the information early on some of these stories. If you're an early peak member, again, this is not our big story. This is not our big story for tonight. Virginia Tech's Babcock still hopes for the Casale Coliseum makeover. The first 10 years of Whit Babcock's tenure as Virginia Tech athletic director certainly were eventful. The next chapter of his reign figures to be just as intriguing. The ACC, which will soon become a coast-to-coast mega conference, has an unhappy member in Florida State. Name, image, and likeness will continue to affect the college landscape. I'm not going to go through this whole article. Early peak members did have an episode early this morning. They watched the whole thing. Babcock talks about Virginia Tech, the issues with NIL. They're trying to consolidate their NIL. They're trying to renovate the Casale Coliseum basketball arena and all these other projects. Later in the interview, this is with Roanoke.com. Later in the interview, let me see here. Let me get to the right point. My apologies. So this is what Babcock said. Phillips did a really good job. Satisfied the schools that are really pushing. We need to shrink the money gap between the ACC and some other conferences. And it also satisfied some of the schools that want to strengthen numbers. This is talking about the ACC expansion. For SMU, Cal, and Stanford to take a discounted share of ACC revenue made it work. I am pleased with it. Virginia Tech is officially pleased with the expansion of the ACC. But Florida State sued the conference last month in an effort to get out of the league. If Florida State can get out of the grant of rights agreement that the ACC has with its members, will that blow up the league? With Babcock. Babcock says this. That will likely be a 2-year plus legal process. Florida State obviously did what they felt they had to do. It's unprecedented to have anybody challenge your grant of rights, and I don't love that it leads to rumors of dysfunction in our league, but I've got my own house to work on. I can't worry too much about Florida State. So a couple times during this interview, Virginia Tech athletic director Whit Babcock said it's going to take 2+ years, 2 to 3 years. Now I'm wondering, and I ask you, the PATC community, Where is he getting this information about a 2 to 3 year process? Why is he coming up with that number? Is it his own legal department? Is it because Mike Alford, Florida State Athletic Director, told him this? Is it because the ACC? Is this the ACC messaging that it's going to take 2 to 3 years? Did Whit Babcock get this information from college football reporters that are talking to ESPN? Why does he believe it's going to take a 2 to 3 year process? I don't have the answer, but I'm interested in why he repeats this timeline a couple times. Could Florida State pave the way for Tech and other schools to leave the ACC? You're going to watch the Florida State case and see what happens. Babcock said, but I know the ACC feels good about their case and that'll work itself out in the next 2 or 3 years. Now that's an indication he's getting this information from the ACC, right? I know the ACC feels good, so they're messaging something to the other ACC schools, and it's going to take 2 or 3 years. It was revealed last spring that Virginia Tech, Virginia, Florida State were among the 7 ACC schools that I met to figure out how binding the grant of rights was. It was really just a discussion between a group of schools working to interpret exactly what the bylaws said, what the grant of rights meant. Whit Babcock said, I don't believe that. It was just a discussion between a group of schools. We're trying to interpret exactly what the bylaw says. Let me ask you a question to the Virginia Tech athletic director. Was Boston College ever invited to these just mere discussions? Was Wake Forest? Was Syracuse? Was Pittsburgh? Was Georgia Tech? I'm guessing the answer is no, and no. So, was it just really a discussion? Ask the athletic director. It's tough if a conference realignment rumors are swirling and you say, we're committed to the ACC 100%, which we are. Your fan base doesn't love that. And then if you go and have conversations, just in case, that can alienate your conference brethren and commissioner. Oh, so if you have conversations, just in case, in other words, those Magnificent Seven conversations were just in case. It was not about interpreting the bylaws. Anyways, and finally, the PATC money shot of this article, this interview coming out of Roanoke.com. The ACC has a tremendous league, has been a tremendous league to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has been tremendous for the ACC. That's the league we're in. Certainly will keep our head on a swivel if the landscape changes. Certainly will keep our head on a swivel. Where have I heard that before? Where have I heard that before? PATC live show. Always keep your head on a swivel. I thought that was pretty humorous. I'm sure he did not get it from us. But I thought that was pretty funny. He used that phrase. So that's Virginia Tech keeping their head on a swivel. I just wanted to put that out there. That was the early peak members. We went through that article big time this morning. Become an early peak member. Hit that join button and you'll get early peak episodes a couple times a week. Now, the story that I have not hit on early peak or anywhere else before we get to the 20th school chalk, the school that is emerging to become Big Ten's 20th school. The information we received today, it flooded on in. We are going to get to it. And that we could not wait. We could not go. We could not talk about this tomorrow. I know there's an NFC Championship game, but we could not wait. First of all, let's talk about Nebraska. Now, again, this is, we always talk about every single school, every single conference, always looking for the highest ground, especially in this unsettling times. Everybody's trying to max out their value. Everybody is trying to make sure they can reach the highest ground possible. I say this over and over and over again. This is a great illustration. You have the interim president of Nebraska who is worried about Nebraska. Nebraska, who's in the Big Ten. Now, I think when we go through this article, I'm going to go through it real quick. But when you go through this, I think you can, basically, I'm interpreting the interim president mostly having this message for internal political reasons to try to prop up, to try to push up revenue expenditures and all that, and faculty numbers, and trying to get the best students, not just about the best student athletes, but again, this guy knows sports, and there's some very intriguing statements he says in this article, omaha.com. We're not going to go through the whole thing. I just want to set the table here. Lincoln, the University of Nebraska interim president, needs Trev Albert's signature, but it's not for a six-figure budgetary item or NCAA legislation on NIL. It's for an overdue item. Behind Chris Carberick's desk in the office of the Nebraska's president in Varner Hall, Russell Wilson, 100-1001 football. It's next to an old Nebraska football pennant in a frame and a sign that reads, "Nobody cares, work harder." Alberts may not recognize the old football. He may not remember the story behind it. 30 years ago, Alberts, the athletic director, tossed that football to Carberick. It was November 26, 1993, the day of the annual Oklahoma game. Before the game, Alberts was out on the field warming up just before number 34 would shake Tom Osborne's hand and walk out for his senior day. Carberick, meanwhile, was up in the student section. He was a freshman at Nebraska Wesleyan, a former all-sports athlete from David City, Nebraska. We were having a good time. Some of my friends had a few tailgating beverages. They were a little rowdy. Trev got done with the warm-ups. He just turned and chucked the football into the crowd. It came right to us. I was a wide receiver in high school. I just picked it out of the air and grabbed it. I quickly stuck it under my coat and hightailed it to the top of the stands. We weren't sure if we were allowed to keep it. Carberick remembers it was cold that day and that Alberts injured his elbow in the first half, just before the national championship game in the Orange Bowl. I thought I jinxed him. Carberick laughs about it now. He has worked for UNL since 1997. Keep that in mind when we get to the heart of the story. He has worked there. The interim president has worked there since 1997 in various jobs, including as a senior vice president, chief financial officer the last several years. He was named the interim president, replacing Ted Carter, who left for Ohio State University on January 1st, and he will serve as the interim until the next president is hired. Now, The article, the interview goes on to say that the interim president of Nebraska, he's talking about the success of Matt Rule, the recruiting, getting some big-time student athletes in some other sports, of course, women's volleyball, all this stuff, right? So he goes on to say so why not steal a page out of athletics in terms of recruiting? Why don't we go recruit Nebraska's 5-star scholars the same way we recruit 5-star athletes? We need to be more competitive, do a better job of recruiting those kids. I love what Coach Rule did in sending Coach Ed Foley around all the schools in the state and put it on Twitter. Why don't we do that with student and academics? Why don't we have a signing day when a kid with a really high ACT score decides to come to Nebraska and go celebrate that? Say we're glad you're in Nebraska. Hopefully stay in Nebraska and build your career and family here. Kaepernick doesn't sound like a typical interim. He's not. He said he told the Board of Regents if they were looking for a caretaker interim to keep the seat warm, he wasn't interested. He wants to use his time here to attack a plan to promote academics and enrollment. The Regents said, go for it. So we're going to push the envelope until they tell us to stop. We're going to go after things. If we do them right, we should be setting up the next president. One of the biggest items is something that was a focus of Carter before he left. Regain AAU membership. AAU membership is based on research spending, student graduation rates, faculty involvement in the national academics and faculty awards, among other things. Nebraska lost it long after it joined. Nebraska lost it not long after it joined the Big Ten Conference in 2011. Kaepernick said, one of the reasons for rejoining the AAU is athletics. The PATC money shot of this article. Whether we like it or not, college athletics is changing all the time. We don't know what college realignment will look like in 5 to 7 years. So even the interim president, who's been there since 1997 at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, we've got to improve ourselves. We've got to reach higher ground. We got to try to recapture that AAU membership. It's not a requirement. It's not a requirement, AAU status, but you got to be a big, successful research university, right? Whether we like it or not, college athletics is changing all the time. We don't know what college realignment will look like 5 to 7 years. There's no guarantee that Nebraska will have a seat in the Big Ten. So we have to make sure we look like our peers. Now, do I think Nebraska is running the risk of not being in the Big Ten 5 to 7 years from now? No, I do not. No, I don't. I don't. But this is an example. I think an example that the PATC community needed to hear. There is great unrest. NIL. Student athletes getting higher compensation. Do we have a salary cap? Don't we? There's going to have to be a CBA, on and on and on and on. House versus NCAA. We got these lawsuits. Private equity swirling around. There is great unrest, even to the point in Nebraska, with an incredible, huge fan base. A good university. Are they a big research university? No, they're not. So there's a great unease with this interim president. He's saying there's no guarantee. In an interview in the Omaha.com release today, there's no guarantee that Nebraska will have a seat in the Big Ten. So we have to make sure we look like our peers. Kubrick said when UCLA and USC, Washington, and Oregon join the Big Ten later this year, 17 of the 18 conference schools will be AAU members. We're the only one who's not, Kubrick said. From the president's perspective, when I walk into meetings with presidents and chancellors, it makes you a little apprehensive in terms of we don't look quite like the others. We have the hammer down now to make sure we're not only on the upswing in athletics, but also on the academic side as well. This is about our public declaration to go compete against the best. That's why we're doing some of this reimagining and budget cutting. We have to have some smart conversations. If those things are not contributing to our goal, we need to stop doing them. I believe that was a very important article to bring up to the PATC community. Do I feel that Nebraska is under threat 5 or 7 years from now, not having a seat at the Big Ten? No, I do not. I do not. Is this some internal politics from the interim president trying to juice up some good decision making in regards to research and academics? And yes, probably. Yes, most likely. But he's been there for a long time. He said it a couple times there. There is no guarantees. There are no guarantees about any of this. About any of it. So, when I'm on X, formerly known as Twitter, and I say something to the effect of North Carolina would love to be another Indiana. I'm not taking a shot at North Carolina. I'm not taking a shot at the ACC. I'm just saying everybody's trying to reach higher ground. The highest ground that institution can possibly get to. That's all I'm saying. Nebraska and the Big Ten, they're trying to reach higher ground with their AAU. Everybody's trying to reach higher ground. Everybody, or maybe not everybody. Maybe not the Ohio State Buckeyes, but even the Ohio State Buckeyes. And then this gets to our big story of the evening. It gets to our big story of the evening. Even the Buckeyes, even the Nittany Lions, even the Michigan Wolverines, even the Wisconsin Badgers, even Alabama, they're all trying to increase the value of the university, sometimes through their own internal stuff that's going on, and a lot of times through the conference. So let's get to our big story. We had big conversation today. BTM and his associates. It lasted about an hour and let's just say 90 minutes. It has become quite apparent. We've talked about this before, and I'm going to really put the hammer on the nail tonight. We've talked about North Carolina. It's going to be very difficult for North Carolina to become available to the Big Ten. If they do become available to the Big Ten, of course, they are target number 2. Notre Dame is target number 1. But neither of them seem to be going to be available to the Big Ten when the ACC implodes. We're not going to go through the North Carolina bit. I'm not going to. You can ask questions. You can say you're wrong, Greg. That's all fine. And phone calls in the chat, super chats, fantastic. But we've talked about North Carolina. We're going to continue to talk about it but not in this episode. I'm not going to. Because everybody is picking up what we've been laying down. I guess there was somebody wrote in North Carolina 247 with some information that looked similar like what we've been talking about for months. I do not know that individual. I did not talk to that individual. But there are other people picking up what we've been laying down. It's going to be very difficult. More now than ever that North Carolina will ever become a Big Ten institution. It can still happen, but there's so many hurdles that have been laid between the North Carolina and the Big Ten. Hurdles that weren't there many years before. Not when Delaney and North Carolina always talked, but those hurdles do now exist. And we're not going to go over those tonight. So, Florida State, that we've been talking about, they have been the chalk to become Big Ten 19th school. I think everybody understands why. Don't need to go through that. We don't need to go through that. However, we've talked about Miami, University of Miami. We discussed, I wish I could remember the date. I would say a couple months ago, we talked about Fox Sports. We were given information that Fox Sports, if they could, I appreciate the super chats and memberships. I will get to them in a second. I will get to them as fast as possible. Okay? But we got to get to this. We talked about how Fox Sports would be in the corner of Miami. It doesn't mean at the time that Miami was going to be in the Big Ten. It just meant we were told Miami, the market is very advantageous for Fox Sports. They're very interested in that. Just like they were interested in Oregon for different reasons, but they were interested in Oregon when a lot of people are saying Oregon was never going to become a Big Ten school. We said the opposite here at Peek Around the Corner. Fox Sports was in the corner of Oregon and Washington. They were the ones who shelled out the money to bring in Oregon and Washington. Okay, we don't need to go through that. We don't need to go in the past. Miami, yes, they have the support of Fox Sports if ACC implodes. We're going to tell you tonight, January 28th, that Miami has much more support than just Fox Sports. You can take this however you want it. You go ahead and disagree with us in the chat with the phone calls. I'd love to have great conversations. But Miami, Florida has more support than just Fox Sports. And there was no way that we were going to sit on this for another day. Even though it's the NFC Championship game, the Niners and the Lions. Miami of Florida has the support of the most important presidents in the Big Ten. Now, we're going to talk about some of the, I don't care. We're not going to get in trouble here. This is from BTM and his associates. I know you guys don't know who they are, but for people who've been following us for 10 years, when people followed us on the USC story, these were the same cats who broke that, who gave me the information. I reported it. Look, the important presidents support Miami. Miami, well, so we were confirmed today without a shadow of a doubt. We were told today that, look, every AAU member, when you become a member of the AAU, at the end, when you get officially into the AAU, you get a unanimous vote. It takes a unanimous vote. at the end. Not at the start, not at the middle, but at the end. You come in as a unanimous vote. So it isn't majority vote, not plurality, whatever. It's unanimous. But so it isn't about who voted for you at the end. It's who was pushing you from the start. And we were told it was Big Ten schools. Most importantly, it was Wisconsin and Michigan. And we'll get to that in a second. Wisconsin and Michigan. Especially Wisconsin, but Michigan as well. They pushed for the now there's going to be I know there's a couple people out there who are probably pretty important. Not a guy like me, but out there probably they're nodding their head yes. Wisconsin and Michigan had Miami's back. And you might say, well, that doesn't mean a whole. That doesn't mean. It means a lot in the Big Ten. When it comes to certain subjects, certain political factions within the Big Ten, when you had Michigan and Wisconsin support like Washington did, that goes a long ways. A long way. So when you have Fox Sports, we're not done yet. Miami has other support. They have other support, what I'm going to get to in a second. That's why there's no way I was going to sit on this story. There was no way I was going to sit on it. I apologize to the Detroit Lions and the 49ers and all the NFL fans in the chat. So Wisconsin, when Wisconsin and Michigan are pushing for something like this, it usually happens. Miami, the horse trading votes came about. A whole, 6 different institutions? Notre Dame was one of them. I don't have information on who pushed South Florida, Notre Dame. But I know who pushed Miami. Now we know, we have confirmation. It was Wisconsin and Michigan. And for those beat writers out there, go ask see what information you can get out of your president or whatever. Ask them that question. Okay. But that's not all. That's not all. It doesn't end there. We talked about, and I do apologize, I'm going to get to your super chats as fast as I can. We talked about Washington and Oregon. Now we do have to go back in history because this is very important. When we talked about Washington and Oregon, when we were saying over and over again that they did have support in the Big Ten, that it would take the Big 12 to crack open the Pac-12. It would take Kevin Warren to leave office. All that happened. And Washington and Oregon were brought in to the Big Ten. How do I say this? When we were going through all that, we kept saying that the Big Ten had to go west before they went east to finish in the East. We said that over and over and over again. They had to go west again after USC and UCLA. They would have to go again before they went east. Now, a lot of people said different, but we said that over and over and over again. And when it happens, and it did, that means that Michigan, Penn State, and especially Ohio State would call the shots on expansion in the Southeast. Ohio State wasn't standing up and cheering for the additions of Washington and Oregon. Neither was Penn State. Michigan was on board for Washington. They weren't. But the votes were going against them. And we can talk about that in another show. The Buckeyes were not, they were one of the last votes to fall for the addition of Oregon and Washington. But some of that was internal politicking, real politique, because the Buckeyes knew that the Big Ten was going to go west before they went east, and now they're going to go east whenever the ACC implodes, a year from now, 2 years from now, or if we go all the way to 2030. Ohio State Buckeyes are going to call the shot. And to end this monologue, the Ohio State Buckeyes are absolutely 100% in support of Miami. They are. So, and I'll get more into that. So, if North Carolina and Notre Dame, if Notre Dame doesn't dislodge themselves from football independence, and if North Carolina, there's a lot of hurdles between North Carolina and the Big Ten. If those two don't become available, the combo that the Big Ten would target, if and when the ACC implodes, is Florida State and Miami. We have never said that on this show. We've talked about Florida State being the 19th chalk. We've talked about Miami having Fox Sports being in the corner of Miami. But Miami has a whole lot of people in their corner. They have a whole lot of people in their corner. They don't have a stadium on campus. They don't have this high-intensity fan base. They don't fill up their stadium. Their brand might have weakened. And all I'm going to tell you is the university itself is something that the Big Ten presidents believe is a Big Ten university, even though they're private. The market is something that Fox Sports would love to have. They consider Miami their peer. So, and the blend of Florida State and Miami is much like the blend of Washington and Oregon. But today we've gotten a whole bunch of information that it was the Big Ten that sponsored, supported, and pushed Miami Hurricanes when it comes to AAU membership. And it's a Florida State and Miami 19th and 20th if Notre Dame and North Carolina can't make themselves or will not make themselves available to the Big Ten. January 28th, we stand on this rock. Just like Washington and Oregon, Colorado and Senate, all this other stuff that we've been ahead of when it comes to college football information, we stand on this rock. Miami, Florida has emerged as the 20th Big Ten school if and when the ACC implodes and if North Carolina and Notre Dame do not become available to the Big Ten. I am way behind on Super Chats. Let me get to them. We'll get to the rest of the comments and your phone calls. John Teal, I hope you put a copyright on your punchlines. No, I do not. I don't think the Virginia Tech athletic director said keep your head on a swivel because he's watching this show. I highly, highly doubt. I know there's really smart people, for whatever reason, watching the fat guy from Minnesota. I think they like to peek in because this is the water cooler. They know they have suspicions of people that we talk. They know that we talk to people from different parts of the college football galaxy. So they like to keep tabs on us. Often after a live show, I'll get a text or a comment or a phone call. But But I don't think the athletic director of Virginia Tech is watching the show. We'll see. John D., Mr. Seminole, ACC says 2 to 3 years to calm its members. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you, John Till and John D. Mooncat. Whoever knighted me, thank you. The email didn't say who it was. My MIL had a heart attack, and I haven't been around the past week. Thanks. Okay, well, Mooncat, I'm glad you're with us. Thank you for the super chat. I don't know who I don't know who gave you the, I think that happened yesterday, but I'm not sure. Anyways, Mooncat, I'm glad you are a member. I appreciate it. John Teal, please let Miami make it because Clemson is booty. Thank you, John Teal, once again for your super chat. John Teal, $5 super chat. Ohio State, Big Ten will have an electric fence around the states of both California and Florida for recruiting. Thank you so much for the super chats and for your continued generosity, John. I appreciate it. Okay, let me get to the comments in the chat. Sky, Nebraska has history with Miami as well. Ohio State is moving at warp speed since old man Gene Smith has stepped away. Michigan, Ohio State vote for Miami. That's a wrap. Now, Miami's not available. There's been no voting. We're talking about in the AAU membership, there was Big Ten supporting Miami. Miami still needs things to go their way, but yeah. The chair of the Association of American Universities, currently also the president of USC. Wonder if USC was supportive of Miami. I do not know. I do not know that. But the current Big Ten schools did line up and they did support Miami. And I think that is very, very telling. Sounds like AAU is a country club. It is. It's a private club. Stephen McNeely, you are absolutely correct. Immaculate, if the Big Ten was involved in Miami's AAU, then they were likely involved in Notre Dame and also involved with Arizona State. Very well could be. I have not heard any of that. Miami could follow in Florida State's wake. Well, again, we have been told here at Peek Around the Corner months ago that the Miami president was going to be very, very cautious, very conservative. And we did get this on December 28th. So this is 1 month ago. Adam Lichtenstein, Miami Athletic Director Dan Radakovich said Miami is an interested observer with Florida State, taking actions toward leaving the ACC. But right now, they are proud members of the ACC. I would be very surprised if Miami took any action in the courts. I would be very surprised. We're still waiting on Clemson. Clemson crickets. We have heard nothing. Now, in our early peak episode 18, for our members earlier this morning, we did add in at the end of the episode Clemson is not talking like, okay, let me give you an example. When we during the USC to the Big Ten, give you a peek around the curtain here on how we did this. When we got all this information that USC called the Big Ten, and we were getting things documented. Okay, there were pictures of stuff. We sent everything immediately to a couple of different news sites. We would send everything immediately to USC 247. USC 247 started having podcasts talking about there's heat, there's stuff brewing between USC and the Big Ten. And they referred to us at Minnesota 247 because I was given the information. I didn't have this YouTube channel at the time. Then USC 247 started reporting that they couldn't even get anybody on the line. They couldn't. USC leadership at that time, and it was Bone, the athletic director, and Carol Folt. They would easily talk about anything, even if you were on the wrong path of something, even though if you asked them about something and it was incorrect. If you said, I heard that they're going to put up a new popcorn stand in the Coliseum, and if that was bad information, they would tell you. They would communicate easily with you if you were a USC beat writer, I call them. USC, the leadership had closed down all communication. All communication. 2 months prior to the announcement. They weren't talking to anybody. Clemson's doing the same thing. They're not talking to anybody. Forget about the people they're not talking to. I'm not going to say the names, but they're not talking. They're not talking. They're not talking about the ACC. There's no interviews being granted. They won't even answer a simple question. Now, normally I'd read that and say, well, they're ready to take action. But I don't know. At this point, I would not necessarily say that. I don't know. I don't know why I got off to that beat. But couldn't Miami follow Florida State's wake? I don't think they're going to. I don't think they are going to. But anyways, let's get back. I'm going to open up the phone lines. Tell me how the football game's going. The Lions versus the Niners. 763-260-1333. The number is 763-260-1333. The lines are open. Give us a call. Iowa's got the new offensive coordinator, Tim Lester. Maybe it'll work. I don't know. I don't know what he's, like I asked Immaculate on Twitter. I don't know what the strong hook that he puts his hat on. I don't know. Is he a good teacher? Is he a good developer of quarterback? Is he a good play caller? I don't know what his strengths are. I'm sure there's something.
Call from
Immaculate,
Mr. Hot Guy. I was just talking about the offensive coordinator.
To send a voicemail, press 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you there? Hello?
Yeah, I thought maybe. Hello?
Yes, Immaculate. I'm sorry. I screwed it up there.
It's all good.
All right. What are you thinking, sir? Tim Lester, has there any, what's his skill set? What does he bring to the table? You got any information?
From what I'm seeing, he was a bit of an offensive mind.
Okay.
I kind of thought that Johns was going to be more in line with what Iowa wants to do, whereas the other guy was a little aerated, a little more, passing, and and he went to become an analyst with Green Bay to help do that, and it was interesting. I guess he just interviewed better, or maybe he's with whatever Ferentz wants to do. He thinks he's better off, but I was a bit shocked. He's definitely not the guy that I would have picked based on resumes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pushback with folks, but it is what it is. We'll see how it goes. He's gonna have a chance to prove himself, and honestly, he can't go down.
Yeah, he can't. Now, I
mean, no matter what he does, it'll probably be better.
I did see something like Western Michigan in 2022 was 127th in offense. His last year as head coach, but
you kind of got to go back to 2018 to see some numbers where he was like 35th in the nation or something like that. But I like the other guy. He was the Duke offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. His quarterback got picked up by Notre Dame. Their offense was not super highly ranked, but we saw them. They played pretty well this year against some pretty good competition. So I just thought that he and what Duke was doing would match in perfectly with Iowa. But it is what it is. I wanted him. Didn't happen. Oh, well, we'll see how it goes next year. As far as this Miami, though, I got to get going here pretty soon, but I just want to go in. So you're saying the presidents like Miami?
Yes, that's without a doubt. Yes.
That changes it for me, because before it was always they were Fox's pick, and I'm like, well, that doesn't, they're only going to get one, but if that's the president's pick, then it's done. Like, that's it. Like,
it's done if Notre Dame and North Carolina don't become available, if they can't, if that gets shut down, if Big Ten cannot get in there with those two, it's that's the message that we got. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Notre Dame's. I mean, they just signed with NBC, unless this was their way of helping NBC in the deal making with Fox, so that they get control over Notre Dame's, first pick on Notre Dame's home games. I don't know, but otherwise, I wouldn't guess on Notre Dame being ready to go just yet. But Miami does help get them. Not that, like, they're saying no, and then Miami's like, oh, if you're taking Miami, that's great. It's just kind of in combination. It's Miami, it's USC, UCLA, it's the East Coast stuff that they have. It's the rivalries that they already had in the Big Ten. It helps. So that might be. I mean, I don't think that they're really looking at Miami unless they think Notre Dame's still in play. I mean, maybe they still would. It's just that it kind of smells like we still want Notre Dame. I don't know what you think on that.
Well, the Big Ten's always going to want Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And the Big Ten wants North Carolina. But the North Carolina thing is going to be, it's becoming like they need a miracle shot to have a chance with North Carolina. So if the way things are right now, Florida State trying to become available, they're the chalk for 19, and if Notre Dame doesn't budge, Miami, we've had the same conversation, but it was from the Fox Sports perspective. Now we're getting, the Big Ten presidents were the one that sponsored Miami, AAU. They believe Miami is a Big Ten university, and they want them. If the other options don't become available, I think the distance between Miami and Clemson has grown from our perspective. Immaculate, from what we were told today, yes, definitely the gap has grown between Miami, Florida, and Clemson, Miami, Florida, and just name any other school that's not named North Carolina or Notre Dame.
Yeah, Miami has a very good medical research facility. They have their own university, hospital system. The things that they have that the Big Ten likes over Clemson are considerable.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
And so I've always kind of thought Miami over Clemson. That's why I was like, I just don't get Clemson. Like, it's Clemson or Florida State. And that to me is sorry, Clemson fans, but it's a no-brainer, Florida State. So to me, Florida State, Miami, it helps Florida State with the rivalry game, keeping it in conference, so then they don't have to worry about Florida. I get it. It makes sense.
Yeah.
I hope Fox has a way to get people to come into that stadium where they've got some other plans in the future for Miami. But, But if they think that that's small time compared to the other things, then that's what it is. I was very stunned that I didn't believe Miami until you said presidents. Then it's like, oh wait, if it's presidents, then I'm sorry, Georgia Tech.
We had it, and it was Michigan and Wisconsin. So
Yeah, those are big.
I guess
pushers.
there's a long like Donna Shalala. We were told, so I feel uncomfortable getting into the deep weeds.
Yes.
But she was at both universities. There's a lot of interest in what Miami's doing in research, and maybe it's what you just said about the hospital thing.
The city of Miami is also becoming a tech hub.
Yeah,
so there's a lot more tech money coming in there, so I'm sure they're probably getting into some of that as well.
Yeah.
So
and they talked about the blend with Florida State, that it works. It works with Florida State. So it was at least a 90-minute conversation with more than one person. So it was like, whoa, well, we're doing a show tonight, and I know it's not the best time, but
we're kind of jumping on here in a little bit as well.
Okay.
So I won't sit around too much longer, but I do appreciate like that changing it from Fox to Presidents. That pretty much seals it. I've learned my lessons in terms of going against you on this stuff, so it changes things.
We got a long road to go though. So everybody buckle up. We're giving you the peek around the corner. Moen and Immaculate going on later tonight. They'll give you their opinion, and we'll just keep going.
Sounds good, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have yourself a good one, and I'm sure you got plenty of guys lined up for phone calls, so I'll get off now.
Appreciate it, Mr. Hawkeye. Is Clemson to the Big Ten dead on arrival? Thank you, Jonathan Weaver, for your super chat. I appreciate it. I'm not willing to shut the door on Clemson to the Big Ten. I'm not willing to shut the door on Florida State to the SEC. But Florida State is a definite chalk to the Big Ten for the 19th school. In Miami has really emerged as the chalk for the 20th school. Now, is it a done deal? Of course it's not. You have Notre Dame out there. You got North Carolina. But the lay of the land, we talk about the lay of the land over and we talk about that as much as we talk about keep your head on a swivel and all of our other taglines. The lay of the land is North Carolina's getting bottled up. SEC has circled the wagon. If they break loose in the ACC, boy, it's going to be very difficult. From what we know from the players that are the actors on the stage, not on the Holy Smoke stage, but the first row of the Holy Smokes Theater with North Carolina, it's a lean SEC. It's a heavy lean SEC. And Miami, Florida, it has a diverse support now. Now we can report that. Definitely. So it looks better for Miami, Florida than it has from our perspective. The gap has grown between Miami and other schools. Okay, let's get back to the phone lines are open. 763-260-1333. That was a great call by the Hawkeye. Again, we've talked about a few stories today. On a Sunday night, we talked about the Virginia Tech athletic director. The ACC has been a tremendous league to Virginia Tech. Babcock said, Virginia Tech has been tremendous for the ACC. That's the league we're in. Certainly we'll keep our head on a swivel if the landscape changes. We also talked about the Cornhuskers, interim president. Kay Baruch said one of the reasons for rejoining the AAU is athletics. Nebraska is going to try to improve their numbers when it comes to research, expenditures, faculty, how much faculty they have involved in research, on and on and on. Whether we like it or not, college athletics is changing all the time. We don't know what college realignment will look like 5 to 7 years. And then this is what the interim president of Nebraska said. There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee that Nebraska will have a seat in the Big Ten. So we have to make sure we look like our peers. Now, I don't think Nebraska has much to worry about. But, again, it's an example of everybody is trying to reach higher ground, and that means even Big Ten universities, SEC universities, always trying to improve your resume, right? Your portfolio. Nebraska has a weakness. They're trying to improve on their weakness just in case something unspeakable happens, just in case the Big Ten fractures 5 or 7 years from now. Who knows? Who knows? But if Nebraska's worried, well, a lot of us have to worry. Sounds like Clemson got stage fright. I don't know. It's crickets. It's crickets. Not just, when I mean crickets, I don't mean just crickets in the sense of they haven't pulled the trigger. I'm talking crickets as in they won't even talk to anybody. They will not talk to anybody because we've asked people who are directly tied with, I got to be careful here. They're not talking to people that they usually talk to. And they haven't. And it wasn't just like, that didn't start right after Florida State, December 22nd. That was starting before December 22nd. Weeks before December 22nd. So everybody's got their hands up in the air going, they won't even talk to anybody. What are they going to do? Not talk to anybody for 2 years? If the Florida case goes on for 2 years, I don't know. Anyway, so the numbers, the phone lines are open. 763-260-1333. If you're new to the channel, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to our channel and open up those notifications. Turn those on because we can come on live at any time. We came live on an NFC championship game. We come live in the morning, afternoon, evening, late evening, midnight. Whenever we have information, we give it to you as fast as possible, as accurate as possible. We do not wait. The moderator, the one who rules with an iron fist, Medea Hernandez Garcia Flugar, said, go. So we run into the studio. We open up the live show. Miami, definite number 20. Florida State's the chalk at 19, but Miami is the chalk at 20. As of right now, January 28th. Smash that like button. Give us a call. 763-260-1333. And if you also new to the channel, if you haven't joined yet, we've got new members tonight. We've already got new members tonight. If you want to become an early peak college football early peak member, Cloak and Dagger, you receive Cloak and Dagger membership only videos early in the morning, couple times a week, giving you the early drop on some information. We did it this morning. You just got to hit the join button. $4.99 a month. Become an early peak member. So if you're interested, just go to the link in the description, hit the join button. Also visit our merchandise store. We still don't have our new logo on our merchandise. We're going to be doing that. We're going to be creating a mug and a trucker hat with the new logo. So that's going to be coming out pretty soon. I'll let you know when the new logo, new merchandise does come out.
Call from
Ryan Matson, Sky Yuma.
Ryan Matson, Sky Yuma, Golden Gopher. Holy smokes. Ryan, it's nice to hear a friendly voice. The floor is yours.
It's been a while since I've been so busy with work, so I haven't been able to catch all your episodes here.
No problem.
I'm glad that I could catch this one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this ever was brought up in a previous call, but I was wondering, like, let's say the Big Ten does add 2 more schools. We're up to 20.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's going to force the SEC's hand and to add more schools then? Or is that...
I don't know. See, I don't know. I don't know if force is the right word. I would say, I know people disagree with me in the PATC community, and that's fine. But I would describe it as if the ACC implodes. In other words, if Florida State can find a settlement with the ACC and they can get out of the grant of rights, and another school follows up and the Big Ten grabs 2 schools, I believe the SEC is going to find value. I believe they're going to find value in a North Carolina +1, whatever that +1 is. I don't know about force, but I think enlarging their footprint, knowing that the Big Ten is expanding again now into another region, the Southeast, yeah, maybe a little force, but I think they would find great value in grabbing the state of North Carolina. What do you think?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing too. Like, if the Big Ten did go up to 20, I could see them possibly getting like 2 or 4 schools. The big one is if North Carolina is joining at the hip with NC State, I could see SEC going for both of them then. I don't think the Big Ten would, but I could see the SEC going for both of them.
It's an
if that was the reality.
Question.
Yep. I just wanted to throw it out there for for everyone to think about and stuff. It's been in the back of my head for a little while, and I was just kind of curious on your take of it.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, it's been on the back of my mind for a little bit, so I was just curious on your take of the whole situation. But thanks again, man. Your show is great, and I'll talk to you later.
You got it. Appreciate it, Ryan. Mr. Golden Gopher himself. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Sky Yuma. We don't get many Gopher calls. And do you notice when we get a Golden Gopher call, it's intelligent? Huh? You guys notice that? All right. Maybe not. Yeah, again, is what happened in the state of North Carolina Board of Governors, does it mean that North Carolina State and North Carolina hips are absolutely tied together? Probably not. But it's just more of a hurdle for North Carolina, and the best case scenario, in my opinion, again, this is speculation, for North Carolina is they can leave independently from North Carolina State, but some of that money they're going to get, it's going to go over to North Carolina State. It's going to be like the UCLA California thing. It's complicated. And North Carolina State had a very good week last week. They did. It might be a pariah victory. It might not mean anything in the long run. But last week was a good week for North Carolina State. It helped improved their political positioning. No question about it. Carolina Moni. Carolina Money. Thank you, D5 Terps. You need Gopher theme music. This is not a Gopher channel, though. Not a Golden Gopher channel. I don't know. Is there a Golden Gopher YouTube channel out? I think there is. I haven't seen it, but I got a feeling there probably is one or two out there. And I know there's a great Big Ten channel out there. Big Ten Ted does an unbelievable job. Go check that YouTube channel out. I'm sure you have. I'm sure you love it. It's a fantastic channel for the Big Ten. There's great channels out there all over the place. We're one of the very few national college football YouTube channels that doesn't come out of an established radio program, or you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's a difficult task, but we're hanging in there. I hope you like our new logo at the bottom left corner of your screen. It's not a new logo. It's our first logo. Hopefully our only logo. We never had a logo before. It only took us 17 months. 17 months to finally get it going.
Call from
TH3.
I'm sorry, did not get the name?
TH3.
Okay, TH3, the floor is yours, Mr. Cornhusker. What is going on?
Well, second half just kicked underway, and the Lions are beating the 49ers 24-7 pretty easily. So
Holy smokes! I did not know that.
Yeah, I'm still consoling myself. I'm a big Ravens fan, like ginormous.
Oh.
And I live in Chiefs territory, so please pray for me.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
I wasn't really worried about the Chiefs. I was more worried about ourselves, and sure enough, that's what happened. So it's one of those, it is what it is. I think I can speak a little bit more what you were talking about with like Nebraska.
Yeah.
And their position in the Big Ten. I think I view this more as we need to take care of a situation now because we're in a prime opportunity to do something here.
Yeah.
If you look at it, Nebraska's kind of been the butt end of the joke with academics in the Big Ten. We've been the bottom since we've been here.
Yeah.
There's reasons as to why that is. A lot of it's outside the university's control. That's not. I wouldn't say it's UNL's fault, but we've had some issues.
Yeah.
So the big thing is just with Oregon coming in, I think the interim president seeing an opportunity to say, "Hey, we can improve our academics and not be the worst member anymore," you know, or like you said with Florida State, they come in and we could really hit the ground running, get up head and heels above them, and just really get our momentum going forward. I mean, it's a good idea across the board. As for the AAU thing, I don't really think it means as much as people think it does.
Yeah. It does and it doesn't. It's. I've been through that war many, many times. Yeah.
And I mean, the main reason why we lost ours is, it's a combination of things. I don't know if I've said it before. Like our hospital, which is like AAU is really big on medical research. Our hospital is like a standalone university, and it's not associated with any of the state schools. So it's not claimed for UNL. If it was claimed for UNL, we would not be near the bottom. Like, we would actually probably be in the middle of the pack near the top, would be my guess. Because the viral research they do on, like, different stuff there, it's advanced, The other main reason is just they don't prioritize agriculture resource, and our school is a pretty big ag school. So it's one of those things. Plus, when we left the Big 12, the big push to get us out was Texas president or AAU president was still mad at us for leaving the Big 12, so they kind of put in a bad word for us, and that's what got us kicked out. It was kind of a boys' club thing, but that kind of is what it is. But realistically, though, the last thing I'd mention in regards to like Nebraska and the Big Ten is mostly just for the fact that the Nebraska athletic department makes too much money. And I don't know did you see that recent report by chance or not?
No, I didn't. They're well over $200 million though.
Yeah. Well over $200 million. And you got schools like Maryland I think Maryland's a good institution, but they make like $60 million a year on athletics.
60? No.
Yeah, I heard $60 million.
Everybody's over 100 million.
It is?
Everyone's cleared the 100 million bar. Yeah.
I might have misheard them,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I mean, an institution getting $200 million. I can't name many schools that do that.
Yeah.
So it's just
Yeah. Look, I first of all, somebody has to be the bottom of the conference when it comes to right. Somebody does. Somebody has to be the bottom of the conference when it comes to basketball, and I think the Gophers have replaced Nebraska. Although the Gophers just won another game. Whatever. What I'm saying is, we all have to be the bottom somewhere. So okay, I don't. I pretty much, the reason I brought that article up is to say everybody is trying to improve themselves all the time. Everybody's trying to reach higher the ground. I say that and people take offense to it. Like I say, yes, North Carolina would try to get to the Big Ten and the SEC if it was available, if things happen, whatever. Even Nebraska, who has an incredible fan base, who they're not going to get kicked. No one's getting kicked out of the Big Ten. But if it fractures, that's another question. But even the Nebraska, even Minnesota, everybody is trying to improve themselves because there is this great unease of what the future is going to look like. So that's why I brought it up.
It's almost like the college Cold War at this point, where you're just trying to build up your arms and make like best as it can be.
Yeah.
And I don't take offense to Nebraska being the bottom at it per se. It's just I view it more as the president who's the interim is looking to become the permanent president.
Yes.
And he's doing it with a chip on his shoulder, which I think the university had needed in that department.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I agree with you.
And then the other thing I was going to mention too, it kind of is unrelated in a way, but then it also could come back. Do you think with the recent, I know Adam Silver is getting extension, do you think the NBA TV deal, which is coming up next year, could play a role in the ACC's contract with ESPN at all?
It could. All of it. Yes, it could. Absolutely. And yes,
Okay.
Adam Silver did get an extension. Yes, I think you've hit on something that's probably going to be pretty important about the NBA extension and regards to ESPN decline. ESPN now ESPN has they have a deadline, right? Of February 28th, 2025. They got that deadline extended. The commissioner signed off on it. Why did ESPN? I don't hear many people talking about it. But why did ESPN even get an extension? Why did they just say a couple years ago, yeah, we're going to extend it past 2020? No problem, of course. But they got an extension on the deadline. You know what I'm saying?
The craziest part to me is I can only read that one way because it's not like NBA viewership has been high. Like NBA viewership has been tanking for over 25 years at this point, and sure, it's a global sport and it's growing, and I love the NBA, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend that NBA does even college football numbers because I'd be lying.
Yeah,
it doesn't do that.
It gets
the only way.
Yeah.
The only thing that reads to me is ESPN doesn't have the assets to make a deal yet. That's the only thing it reads to me.
The reason why the NBA next media deal is going to be big. You touched part of it because of the international rights, but they're advertisers like the NBA because the demographics of who views the NBA, that's what they like. They like the younger crowd. They like the ones who are willing to spend money on the products and services that are advertised on the NBA. That's one of the major problems with MLB is because the age of the viewers are older. They're outside of that prime time market demographics that spends money on products and services. So it's the youth of the NBA consumer, which is propelling the price.
the other things I've heard in regards to like the NBA, you can see some of these side effects this year already. They are wanting to get over-the-air games a lot more now, and they're pushing it heavy.
They are.
So
You are correct.
Yes, like ABC is getting a lot more NBA games compared to what they used to get. And I don't know if it's just because there's a lull in television or what the deal is, but they are prioritizing getting over-the-air games, easier access to people, which I think is the smart thing they can do for their league. But I feel like potentially, and the big rumor is, I had heard NBC might be making a play for it.
Yes.
To where they were assembling this ginormous deal for the NBA. So I'm wondering if ESPN's trying to work with them or if they're working with Turner to make a deal on their end. That's the big thing that I think plays into conference realignment that a lot of people don't think about, just because it's a different sport. You know, I mean, if you think about the billions of dollars ESPN spends on the NBA each year, NBA is going to want more because they want their viewership to go up, but they already have good advertising. I mean, what's stopping ESPN from saying we have to drop assets that we can't afford to keep along with this?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
That's my biggest thing.
So my question to you is, TH3, do we have a date yet for the spring football game for Nebraska?
April 27th, I believe, kickoff. I could be wrong on this. I think it's like noon or 11 o'clock.
Okay. April 27th, noon, 11 o'clock. I got a feeling that Minnesota's probably going to be the same day. But anyways, if Minnesota, I'm going to try to do a live watch party for Nebraska spring game because of Dylan Raiola. Is he an early? Is he an early rollie?
Yes, he is.
Yes,
he's been on campus. He's been spotted courtside at multiple basketball games. The other night, John Cook and the assistant volleyball coach were there with him.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
So so we're gonna be doing the live watch party spring football game. Matt Rule, Nebraska, Dylan Raiola. We're gonna be watching him. We're gonna be dissecting every single 5-yard swing pass here at Peek Around the Corner.
I really hope they put the defense one against him, just because that defense next year, I think, has potential to be our best since 2010.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm being completely honest, they're returning almost all of our major players, minus maybe a couple that I can't think of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But I know Hutmaker, I think Gifford's back, if I'm not mistaken. Like, a lot of big-time defensive players are coming back, and that's going to be big for us.
Yeah. Yep. All right, sir.
Thank you for the time.
Appreciate the phone call, TH3, Mr. Cornhusker. Thank you. Call again, sir.
Thank you.
All right. TH3, Mr. Cornhusker, giving us some great information. Red Legs, Minnesota should go to the Big 12. Interesting. Minnesota isn't making the Big 10 a better conference. Well, Red Legs, Minnesota made the Big 10 conference. Minnesota built the Big 10 conference. Minnesota was one of the original 6 schools and is the school that has voted yes on every single expansion candidate, including Michigan State when they sponsored Michigan State and Michigan sponsored Pittsburgh. Minnesota was for the Big Ten Network. Minnesota built the conference. So if you're saying they don't make the Big Ten a better conference, they're the ones who built it. They're the ones who print out the golden tickets, maroon and gold, Minnesota Golden Gophers. Okay. Let's see here. I agree. The ACC network has not been a failure. It hasn't. It's made about as much money as everybody thought it would. It's done pretty good. It's done pretty good. I agree. It's done pretty good. Hummus Hero, the Big Ten footprint, already has more population density than the SEC, and it's only going to increase if they overlap in Florida. The SEC should expand the footprint, or it could come back to bite them. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Red Lakes does not like Minnesota in the Big Ten. How does Minnesota make the Big Ten stronger conference? The 1940s are long gone. Minnesota makes the Big Ten hockey conference pretty strong. The wrestling, yes, Minnesota, they did finish in the top 10 in football 5 years ago. Not bad. They finished 10th in the country. They won 29 football games. The previous 3 years before last year, the best since 1962 and 64. I don't know. Minnesota is the 15th largest, media market. So that's pretty good. There's a lot of eyeballs up in the upper Midwest. That's Big Ten country. Is Minnesota the top half valued schools in the Big Ten? No, they're not. When it was a 14-team conference, I would say Minnesota was the 11th most valued university athletic program in the conference. Now they're probably going to be probably 15th, right? So they're not one of the top schools in the conference. No question about it. But they're not going to go anywhere unless the top teams go somewhere into a Super League. But people disagree with me. That's fine. That is fine. Yeah, some, and the University of Minnesota brings in mega bucks research, incredible university research in health. Minnesota has big time value, but not in football. We got a nice stadium, but we're not going to be winning national championships. We're not going to be winning Big Ten championships. It just isn't going to happen. Now, does that mean we should play in the Big 12? I don't know. We're not a Big 12. We're a Big Ten university. We are a Big Ten university. How will Florida State and Miami hockey programs do in the Big Ten? If it was Miami of Ohio, they might do pretty good because they have a hockey program. I don't think those two universities will be getting a Big Ten program at any time. We did not make the Final Four in 1977. That has been cleared off the record books because of a scandal. That did not happen. It did not happen. It did, but it did not happen. It's off the record. It's off the record books. Minnesota drags down the Big Ten. Being a Buckeye fan, I do like Minnesota better than Michigan. Phone lines are open, 763-260-1333. Even coming out of Carolina by reporters there now, UNC is a heavy SEC lean. Yeah, there are a lot of people coming out. What we were reporting months ago, people seem to be reporting the information now. We shall see. Red Legs is not going to get banned for ripping on Minnesota's value. Nope. If he doesn't use hate speech, he's not getting banned. He can rip on Minnesota throughout the... If he doesn't, we don't want to spam, but if he brings up interesting comments and ripping on Minnesota, he is free to do so. Clemson board meeting is coming up, but that is the annual quarterly board meeting. We are looking for something else. We are looking for a meeting at Clemson's Board of Trustees that does not happen on February 1st or February 2nd. So, yeah, we got a good volleyball. We got a very good volleyball program. But, man, Nebraska and Wisconsin, they have widened the gap. They've made the gap even bigger. And now Nebraska's using the NIL money in women's volleyball. Nebraska's becoming a monster in women's volleyball. A monster. Yeah, Minnesota has a well-rounded athletic department, but Minnesota is not going to be able to compete in football. It takes, it's just not going to happen. It's like asking Alabama to compete against Minnesota in hockey. Alabama can do a lot of great things. They can create a Division I hockey program. They can create hockey rinks and in 20 years. But, year in, year out, they're not going to be able to compete with Minnesota in hockey. We're not going to be able to compete with you all in football. It just isn't going to happen. Everybody in the chat, have you ever been to Minnesota? Have you ever been to the top half in Minnesota? Do you know that Minnesota, the gap, when you're talking about hockey players, NHL players, college players, the gap between Minnesota and Michigan, Minnesota and Massachusetts keeps growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. We're putting all of our top athletes. There's hockey rinks. There's hockey programs everywhere. It's in the blood. It's a couple hundred years of hockey. It isn't going away. You go on Twitter, if you want to go on YouTube and go Minnesota High School Hockey Tournament. The fans are packed. The viewership, it's a very weird, odd, unique state. No, we're not gonna produce football players. Now, and the Big Ten knows this. The Big Ten created its hockey. When the Big Ten created its hockey conference, they had to go to Big Ten. They had to go to Minnesota. And Minnesota acquiesced. Minnesota was in a very popular conference, the WCHA. We had big rivalry with North Dakota, with Denver. We were set. But the Big Ten wanted to create its own conference, and it had to go to Minnesota. Minnesota is where all the big hockey sponsorship money is. And Minnesota said, look, we've been taken care of by the Buckeyes, by Michigan, by all these big football schools. So we're going to acquiesce. We're going to say it's okay. Let's create the Big Ten Hockey Conference. It's just the way it is. Some schools help with the bandwidth of sports within a conference. Vanderbilt, baseball, SEC, the baseball program, they're dumping NIL money into Vanderbilt baseball. Is the SEC really upset that Vanderbilt doesn't compete in football? The SEC is not going to be kicking out Vanderbilt anytime soon. It's just, that's the way it is. That is the way it is. Hated to see the big hockey teams leave the WCHA. Minnesota hockey, yeah, it's weird. People don't understand. So, and I don't blame people. There is nothing like it in this country. Very odd state. Very odd state that we live in. Just the way it is. Yeah, they don't mind Vandy at all. Okay, phone lines are open, 763-260-1333. You can talk about anything college football. We're new. We are, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel and open up your notifications because we can come on live at any time. Also, if you want to become an early peak member, go to the description box below the video. We provide cloak and dagger information before we put it out live. We did it this morning talking about with Virginia Tech athletic director saying that he's keeping his head on a swivel. And so if you're interested, please hit the join button.
Call from
Bobby.
I'm sorry, did not get the name.
Bobby.
Bobby, nice for you to call. The floor is yours. What do you got to say?
Oh, well, first, Greg, I think I missed, I'm sure other people are doing this, kind of going in and out. Was your initial or your main point tonight about Miami?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I mean, that just makes tremendous sense to me, and I understand for the people for whom it doesn't.
Yeah.
But it makes tremendous sense to me. You've said it on your channel. The South Florida market is huge, and even Florida itself doesn't quite cover it.
Yeah.
It doesn't. The SEC, while the SEC I don't think would take Miami, they have looked at it because of the same reason. They know that. And Miami's fan base, and I've said this to you before, it's not as engaged as Florida State's. It's not as engaged as some of these others, but it's still of a good size. And you see that in the ratings because Miami hasn't been good, and they still do okay ratings-wise. So that's when you want to take a team, when they don't do well and the ratings are still okay. Because what will they be like when they get on their feet? What will... Yeah.
And the new information, we were on a 90-minute phone call today, and we were told a big, long story about how the Big Ten presidents basically sponsored Miami in the AAU vote. We were learning things we'd never heard before. It happened, Michigan and Wisconsin. The presidents, that's a big deal. So, yeah, now they have become the definite chalk with Florida State. If Notre Dame and North Carolina do not become available, and they don't seem that they will become available to the Big Ten as of now.
No, it makes sense for lots of reasons. I mean, academically, research. I know people say that their stadium, but among the other reasons, unfortunately, that's lower on the list. That's not higher on the list.
Yeah.
And no, I agree with Miami, and also, like I say, people don't. I'm stammering, and I'm sorry about that. But Tony Altimore, your great friend. But a couple of, a year or two ago, he did a Twitter series on size of fan base. And what he did was he combined 2 or 3 or 4 different places where they tried to figure out fan base sizes and just combined them. And so, of course, there's leeway in all of them. But what happens is if you ever look up, and he went for conference by conference and nationally, how big is the fan base for every Division I football program? The thing is with what Tony Altimore did with that, all 4 of the teams that are now in the Big Ten from the Pac-12 were the top 4 fan base sizes on that thing.
Mm-hmm.
All 4 of them. Outside of Notre Dame, and curiously, Syracuse had a big fan base on that. Because I think that's because they have upstate New York.
Yeah.
But there's lots of problems, and they lost AAU status at the same time as Nebraska back in the day. If Syracuse had invested in football and sports, it'd be interesting. They may have been Penn State's partner a long time ago, and maintained AAU status. But Florida State and Miami are at the top of the ACC list in terms of fan base size. These are not mistakes. They're just not.
Yeah.
They're just not. And I also need to say, I understand what you're saying with Minnesota hockey, because it's like Iowa wrestling.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And that's, again, another culture that people who don't live in the Midwest or near the state don't understand. I mean, wrestling in the state of Iowa is like a cultural religion, just like I'm sure hockey is if you're in mid-state and upstate Minnesota.
And I can't make the argument. I can't say that brings a whole lot of value to the Big Ten, like hockey, because it doesn't. Although it's a revenue sport for Minnesota, we actually make money on that sport. But for most, they don't. So I can't bring that argument. I can't use that argument. But when we're talking about like bandwidth, like not just it's hard to these universities, they want to create the most opportunities for the student athletes. And creating opportunities is sponsoring more sports. And some of these schools, like Iowa, helps everybody else out when it comes to wrestling, right?
Yep.
That's just in it, and it spreads the value. It spreads, and now women's volleyball is now Nebraska is starting to really, everybody has to step up their game. So yeah, it's not like I can argue that Iowa's wrestling brings in a whole lot of money, but there are people watching the Big Ten Network, BTN Plus. They're watching these wrestling meets, and they're putting their eyeballs on Iowa, and it helps everybody. So
Stanford and Cal wanted so desperately to be in a Power 4 league, not because of football. They were never going to win it, but because they love to sponsor all these other sports.
Yes.
And they needed to be in a like competition to do so, along with their high academics. Well, that's the Big Ten mentality right there.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. Yes, sir. And you're right. What rising tides do float all boats, because originally it was Penn State that was the great girls volleyball team, and now Nebraska and Wisconsin. I mean, some of the other Big Ten teams have cut it. Just like Iowa wrestling was the dominate. You go back to the 80s and 90s, it was Iowa wrestling just dominated everybody. But then eventually that spread through. That has now spread through the rest of the Big Ten, and you've got lots of good Big Ten wrestling teams. And as a conference, they dominate. Yes.
You're saying the same thing now with Caitlin Clark and Iowa women's basketball. Well, the SEC also has a lot of good teams, but you see other teams now elevating their women's basketball programs. That has, as the stadiums are filling up and the ratings are filling up from this thing. And so it only takes one team to get really good in the Big Ten for a while, and the other teams start to catch up and compete. And it's because they understand it's from again, you have to think like a university president. And the university presidents see value in Minnesota for their academics, number one, and research. And then it's not just football, it's all these other sports for availability to attract students.
Yeah.
And I would say for Miami and Florida State, by the way, what's the other reason to have Miami? You can recruit the whole state.
Yes. And they bring in a diverse market, a diversity.
Yes.
You're bringing in a different type of market that the national advertisers would love. National advertisers for Big Ten live events. So it's Yeah, and then so when we heard today, Bobby, that the Big Ten president sponsored Miami in the AAU, at the end of the day, when you're voted in to the AAU, you get voted in unanimously. But it doesn't start out as a unanimous vote.
No.
But it ends up. They always make sure it ends up that way. And we found out today that there was Big Ten, primarily Wisconsin and Michigan, that pushed for Miami, and that means a lot inside the Big Ten. So, yeah.
Wisconsin and Michigan are kind of people who are outside the Big Ten don't know. Behind the scenes, if you want to know who's kind of the Ivy League tower presidential standpoint, pushing for academics over everything else, it's Wisconsin and Michigan behind the scenes.
Yes.
People in the Big Ten know that.
Yeah. So that's why when we were told this, it was like, okay, everything's lining up, and we're not going to sit on this. We're going to talk about it tonight.
Well, and I would have to think, because this case is going through in Florida, and you can always amend, a suit, how easy would it be for Miami to be amended into this lawsuit that Florida State is running right now? They could pull that trigger anytime.
Well, anytime.
Yeah,
well, they're I don't know. I mean, they're a private university. They would not have it's interesting. Let's put it that way. We were told early on that their president was going to be very, very, very conservative on this.
Yeah. I've heard that before
but
too.
there is some great relationship between some relationships always matter. There's some great relationships between the president of Miami and Wisconsin and Michigan. It's not just about there's something else going on in the personal connections. So it's But
my point is that they wouldn't have to launch their own lawsuit. That they wouldn't have to start this from scratch.
You don't think so?
What's that?
You don't think so? I think they would.
This lawsuit's in Florida, and why couldn't you amend the lawsuit to add other people who are asking at this point, it's a lawsuit basically asking questions whether these things are valid. It's not even a lawsuit to actually leave the conference per se. And so I don't know. I mean, it just seems like to me they would actually, or at least if there's legal arguments that are based in Florida law, Miami would be the one for whom that would also be applicable. When you're looking at trying to add teams, who, they're right there. Everything Florida State's doing or saying, Miami can sit there and say, well, that can apply to us. No, I'm not saying they're going to do it tomorrow, because I know their university president is slower to act than maybe some. But it also, I don't know that, like I say, given Florida State's in Florida and all of those things, I think it would be easier for Miami in terms of the path. There's a lot of things they wouldn't have to recreate, I guess is my point. I still think it'll be interesting if Miami and Florida are it, and I know other people have came after me and said it's not the same. If all of a sudden the ACC doesn't have a team in Florida, that will have a massive psychological effect on the rest of that conference.
I remember you brought that up in the last comment, which is excellent comment. Yep, thank you for reminding me. You did bring that up.
Yeah. And I know people reacted to that because I said it'll be like the effect of USC and UCLA, and they said it's not the same. It's not the same university-wise.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why when the Big 12 expanded, they took a team in Central Florida, not because they were the best team in the world, but they needed a team in Florida. And if all of a sudden the ACC doesn't have a team in Florida, I mean, I don't know. I look at the ACC leadership, and when they brought in the three teams they did, to me, they should have gone after South Florida as well at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
They're AAU.
Yeah.
And again, as a bowl, and I wonder at these meetings coming up for the ACC, are they going to propose increasing penalties? They could start proposing things, and as you increase numbers, and especially if Florida State doesn't have a voice, it's going to be harder to fight. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand. Yeah.
And that wouldn't make North Carolina happy. That's why I say if the ACC starts to resist some of this stuff, the bar for North Carolina State, and Virginia to get out keeps getting higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
Not impossible, just higher.
Yeah.
And I also think one of the most interesting things is if ESPN does not renew for 2027, but they still have a grant of rights, how that gets figured out is going to be one of the most confusing, fascinating things coming up.
Yes, it is. And I'm quite confused on whether that grant of rights will still be held by the conference
Ending
past July 1st, 2027, if ESPN declines to, if they make the announcement prior to February 28th, 2025, if they say they're going to decline, not carry ACC distribution rights past 2027. I don't know when that grant of rights ends. I don't know when the ACC.
Yeah.
I don't know. We've asked the question, but nobody knows. Everybody's kind of like, I don't know what's going on.
Well, this is where, again, you look at the Big 12 leadership and you just think ACC needed somebody like that. Because if they were proactive, you would add South Florida. You'd also be talking to Fox and other TV partners and say, hey, ESPN, if you don't renew this deal, we're getting other deals in place. And you wouldn't let your members feel like you're in limbo. But it just doesn't feel like the ACC leadership has that kind of assertive vision. And they haven't historically.
Yeah.
That's part of why they're in the mess they are. But does that make sense? I mean, why wouldn't you be doing those kinds of things?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are things the ACC could be doing as a conference with its TV partners to force to positively push the issue. Anyway, great show. I don't want to ramble. I don't want to take too much of your time.
Appreciate it, Bobby. Call again, sir. Excellent phone
God
call
bless.
Once again. Thank you, sir. Now, what the heck happened here? 24-24? Didn't you just tell me it was 24-7? Joe, what are you doing? Are you reading the scoreboard correctly, Joe? What is going on in that football game? Holy smokes.
Call from
Jamie Thornton.
Mrs. Razorback is on the line. Jamie, the floor is yours. What do you got to say?
Well, Greg, talking about Miami, I've mentioned to you, before about some of the comments that's been made about them.
Yeah.
They're a very weird. I guess this whole thing is weird, right? And they're just one of those that's just. I don't know if you want to call it an anomaly, because they check off so many boxes for the Big Ten, right, as far as the school goes. They're AAU. They're just everything that they could want, and I can understand why Big Ten presidents would want Miami. Now they have some situations, obviously, right? Like as far as the fan support goes, they don't have the local fan support. They don't have the fanatic fan base. They don't even have a stadium. Now, those are all things that can be worked on, obviously, right? Getting that kind of thing done. So, I mean, it's a lot easier to do that than, say, the academics and all the other stuff. But obviously, as the last caller said, they still rated 31st last year in the ratings, despite being down. So they still have a big national brand presence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that part is huge. And it's just, it really got me thinking about what the last caller was saying. And I know that Immaculate has talked about this before. We don't know, obviously, how all these moves are going to work out. Is ESPN going to pull the plug?
Yeah.
You know, if they do, and that opens up maybe even more so for North Carolina.
We don't know what the courts are going to say. You know.
Right. We don't know any of this stuff. But
Yeah.
if things work out, if things pan out, and we see Florida State and Miami go to the Big Ten, and we see North Carolina, Virginia, whoever goes to the SEC, what's left? Are these schools that are high academic schools? Because I've heard Immaculate talking about, and I've heard you say the same thing with some of these. We might start seeing a restructuring of some of these conferences that aren't part of the SEC, Big Ten, and Big 12, where they get smaller. Could we see some kind of restructuring where, an Ivy League type league forms? What do they do? What happens? It's going to be very interesting to see who is left and how this plays out. The thing, I guess, the biggest thing you've been talking about Clemson for a while. It's sure not looking good for Clemson right now. Just seeing that and hearing that news about Miami and who the Big Ten would want to take. If the Big Ten has said goodbye to Clemson, if their number 20 is Miami, and the SEC is all focused on North Carolina and possibly Virginia, I don't know what that could very well be why we keep hearing crickets out of Clemson. I just don't know if Clemson has a spot.
I hope we learn more here in the next couple weeks about Clemson. All eyes are still on Clemson. Could Clemson's perception match what we're being told by many different parties in regards to Miami being a strong target for the Big Ten? And I guess that could be playing into it. We don't know. I don't want to connect it to. I don't.
Right. I understand, Greg.
But
I mean, you don't want to do that kind of thing if you don't have a landing spot. And the SEC, just from everyone I've talked to down here, and they're not saying that they wouldn't end up taking them, but they're definitely not a priority for the SEC right now.
Yeah.
That's just, it's like you said at this point, Florida State. Florida State would have been a lot more of a priority as far as playing defense goes than Clemson would have been. But we all know where Florida State is heading. Between everything that's gone on. So I just really feel for them. They have a great tradition of football, and not just the two national titles they've won. They won if you look at their record since '81, they've had over 50 bowl appearances.
Yeah.
Their football history speaks for itself.
They got a great fan base for football. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a fanatical fan base that you think would fit perfect for either the SEC or the Big Ten. So it's just going to be interesting to me as this moves along to also think about not only Clemson, but what happens with things like, obviously the North Carolina thing is so crazy. And you're talking about some long time rivalries. North Carolina in a way is kind of like a smaller Texas maybe. And you think about all the schools that used to be with Texas and the Big 12, how they anchored them, the Southwest Conference before. And so you think about all these schools in North Carolina, like NC State, Duke, Wake Forest, and so forth. Kind of similar. What happens with the relationships? We know about the UNC Duke situation with basketball. Obviously, I think that would obviously be kept alive, but as a single game, wherever Duke ends up. But how much? Go ahead, Greg.
No, it's I just you brought it up earlier. Could there be some sort of growing connection? I don't know how to say it. Growing connection between some of those ACC schools and the Ivy League schools. Could there something?
Right.
Yeah, it could. It would take a couple big things, though. First of all, the Ivy League schools would have to immerse themselves in this new world of paying student athletes. And they could do it. Right. They could blow us all away, okay? But they would have to jump over that Rubicon. They would have to, do it. They would have to make that decision. And, the media companies would have to, at the end of the day, you're looking at media contracts and sponsorships and, what does a Harvard versus a Duke do on the football gridiron? It's hard for me to make that leap. Don't want to completely shut the door on it. It's a fascinating thing to talk about. That's for sure.
It really is, because if you think about, I know the last caller was talking about with Cal and Stanford, and especially when you think about Stanford's tradition. They're always up there as far as the top goes in athletics and overall athletics. They could be totally left out and totally just, I don't even know, schools like that, what they're going to end up doing.
Yeah.
The ACC, if it falls apart completely and it's just a shell of itself, I really don't know what happens. Do schools do the ACC try to reband it, reform with USF, Tulane? They try to go across the country, make it a coast-to-coast conference with high academic schools, to join Wake Forest, Boston College, that kind of thing, Duke. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
But
maybe.
it's just another one of those things. I know that's many steps down the road, but you've got to think the ACC. I don't know. You've got to think, what are they going to try to do? Is there any, I guess it's kind of like, the Titanic right at this point. How do you stop the sinking? Yeah. It's coming. Florida State and Miami are trying to get out. All this wouldn't have happened. North Carolina. Like you said, and they're the heart of the ACC, Tobacco Road.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm not surprised about Miami. But they're very weird. You sit there and think about it, and you're like, they have very little local fan support, but they do get a lot of fan support nationally. They are a very good school, and of course, Florida recruiting, it speaks for itself with having both Miami and Florida State. So I'm not really surprised by it. I'm just really not.
All righty. Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate it. Mrs. Razorback.
Mm-hmm. You take care, Greg. You have a great one.
Beautiful. Call again. Thank you. It's always great to hear from Mrs. Razorback, Jamie Thornton. Thank you so much, Donnie McNerney. I apologize for not getting to this earlier. Donnie, I apologize. Thank you for your gift of a peek around the corner Cloak and Dagger member. Again, Donnie, you are knighted Cloak and Dagger once again. Whoops. That was the wrong. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Donnie. Appreciate it. And to, I think it was the Red Raider herself, right? Of course, now I don't have it anymore. Laura Weiss, I believe, is the one that picked up the Cloak and Dagger membership. Laura Weiss, you are Cloak and Dagger Knighted. Congratulations. And let me see if I've got any other catching up to do. I think we're good to go on that. We have got, I don't think we're going to have, well, I shouldn't say it, but last week we had meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. We got to keep our heads on a swivel. Tomorrow is January 29th. As you all know, we reported on November 15th that the window for Clemson to pull the trigger when it comes to following Florida State in the courts is sometime between January 20th and February 6th. February 6th is coming up. The winter meetings are coming up real soon on January 15th. Clemson, are you going to pull the trigger? Nobody can get a hold of anybody at Clemson. No interviews are being taken. Wow. I don't know what's... we are going to take the L here at Peek Around the Corner. We're going to take the big fat L on, February 7th? If Clemson doesn't pull the trigger by February 6th. So that'll be a fun show. We know they've done a lot of work, but we'll see. We shall see. Right now, it's complete quiet. We weren't expecting that. But anyways, we'll get to it. We'll get to that big fat L on February 7th. That's not next week. So this coming up week, we're going to be busy. A lot of stuff. Who knows? There's always a surprise or two during the off season of college football. We're going to be, we did talk about last week in a live show, we talked about the quarterbacks of the ACC. I think we'll take another conference. Maybe the SEC, the quarterbacks of the SEC, running through them, rank them, speculate on what they can do for their teams going into next year. We'll do that. We'll start with the quarterbacks, then we'll go to the running backs, and we will immerse ourselves into the new rosters of all these teams. The transfer portal's not even done yet. I'm not even sure that the coaching carousel is done yet. I got my eyes on you, Chip Kelly. Are you going to take the offensive coordinator position with the Seattle Seahawks? Are you going with Dan Quinn? Is Dan Quinn going to be hired as the head coach? Chip Kelly, are you leaving UCLA? So far, it's a no, but we're keeping an eye on that story and everything else. So we're going to shut down our live program. We've been on the air for 2 hours and 20 minutes on a Sunday evening. I want to thank you all for joining us during the NFC Championship game. How dare we? How dare we? But we had to. The big story of this evening, Miami, they are the chalk to become Big Ten 20. If Notre Dame and North Carolina do not avail themselves to the Big Ten after the ACC implodes, Florida State, Miami, that's the combo. That's what we're looking at here at Peek Around the Corner. We were told a lot of stuff today. We had to report to you as soon as possible. The Big Ten presidents, they look at Miami, the University of Miami, as a peer school when it comes to the Big Ten universities. That's big time support. You combine that with the Fox Sports support in the Miami edition. If Notre Dame and North Carolina do not avail themselves of the Big Ten, we got ourselves the combo. Florida State, Miami, we're feeling pretty good about reporting that this evening, January 28th. If you're new to the channel, if you liked our content, please subscribe to the channel, open up your notifications, and before you leave the PATC chat room, please smash the like button. I want to thank you all for the wonderful donations, the gift memberships. Thank you so much, Don McKerney, Corey, and everybody else. Thank you for the wonderful super chats, the great comments in the chat room, and the great phone calls. Always the great phone calls coming out of the PATC community. This is a phone call-led show. After I get done with the monologue, you guys direct the show, and you are the best thing about this show. So thank you so very much. Until next time, which is going to be real soon from now, tomorrow. Until next time, from all of us at PATC, to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you